I actually asked Anthony today if he wanted a pseudonym, and he was like, "No, you can call me anything you want. Just don't call me late for dinner."
Just don't call me late for dinner. Great dad joke, Anthony.
Sex positive culture.
It's my body to give.
Are threesome gifts a thing?
Taking a bra off.
I like your bed.
Horizontal.
This is Horizontal with Lila.
I'm Lila, and I'm sleepy and horizontal in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
I'm Lee, and I'm thrilled to be horizontal with Lila.
My name is Lila, and I love sleepovers, spooning, sharing, storytelling, sex, and stargazing, among other things. So I metaphorically rolled them up in audio form and called it a podcast. Horizontal with Lila is slow radio. It's intimacies of all kinds. It's consensual eavesdropping. It's us lying down right next to each other, wearing robes, sharing secrets in your ears. Each horizontal session with a guest is between 2 and 3-ish hours long and divided into 2 episodes. Part 1s, like this one, are available anywhere you get your podcasts, and Part 2s are available exclusively to patrons of the horizontal arts. As you might imagine, the Part 2s go deep, since we've been marinating in conversation for over an hour. And at the very, very end, my guest tells me a story of some intimacy. For access to the full horizontal, go to patreon.com/horizontal with Lila. It's spelled patreon.com/horizontal with Lila, and become a patron of $5 or more per month because, fair warning, horizontal lovers, when I launch season 3, and it is happening soon, I'll be shifting some things, revealing a couple of surprises, and revamping my Patreon tiers. If you've already become a patron, you'll be grandfathered in with access to all the episodes and my gratitude for being an early listener. In this episode, recorded in a slender little apartment in Brooklyn, New York, I lie down with Lee. Lee is a pleasure guide, a Tantrika, a Bodyworker, an intimacy coach. She's a sensuality specialist. I first met Lee when she was working with a friend of mine at the Women of Venus, which you'll hear about in Part 2, Episode 71. I've been trying to get her to move in with us at Hacienda Villa for about a year now. When I'm around Lee, I feel warm and grounded. She is exceptionally supportive and clear-eyed at the same time. Her belief in the version of me that I love the most, my favorite self, and my potential to embody that self and act beautifully on the world is like an amulet that she has made by hand. She has her finger on the pulse of the great mystery without being a prig about it. She's a girl's girl, a woman's woman, with a generous dash of humility and a fierce commitment to stand for her own growth and for yours. For all the information about Lee's intimacy and pleasure coaching practices, find her on leenoto.com, LEENOTO.com. And by the way, on Instagram, she's at YouAlreadyNoto, NOTO. This episode was recorded in Lee's bed, in another part of Brooklyn, and though you are spared the trains screeching around the bend like they do when I record in my room, there's a few sonic visitors. An old heating unit, a creaky ceiling that is someone else's floor, some pretty raucous neighbors, and a plane or two. City living. Local color. In this part of our conversation, we talk about slow-going sex and celibacy, plant medicine journeys and masturbation, objectifying yourself, and faking orgasms, promiscuity as rebellious self-expression, pushing buttons just to know what they are for, the glorious practice of bragging, a tiger mom, and driving herself to perfection so hard that her face paralyzed itself to get her attention. To see photos from this recording session and get behind-the-scenes access to horizontality and my sex-positive life, follow Horizontal with Lila on Instagram and sign up for my missives on horizontalwithlila.com. And now, come lie down with not one, but two recovering perfectionists in Brooklyn, New York. We are in Lee's really sweet little cream-colored bedroom, which feels like a place where somebody has done a lot of meditation. And on her mirror, oh, I should have showed that. On her mirror, it's written, it looks like in lipstick, red lipstick, I am enough in script. And then to our left, above the bed and to the side is a vision board with all kinds of words like love wins, healthy and happy, dancing as slow as they can. What does that mean to you?
That's a reminder for me to slow down. Just really enjoy the moment and enjoy the process, and to connect back to my own sense of feminine energy and rest and replenishment.
I heard somebody say, and I don't know who to attribute this to, but I use it in my yoga classes a lot when I teach. When people are moving too fast, I say, slower than slow, and then slower than that.
I love that.
Which is really a kind of sex that I really love. One of my cherished memories with a lover is I had just moved back to New York after traveling for 9 months and burning out, and then spending 2 months at my mother's house in Florida for the first time since I was 17, and then a month with my father in upstate New York. And I'd moved back, so this would be 2012, I think. And I was living in the Loom building in Bushwick, which is this sort of mixed-use building that has commercial enterprises on the first floor, including a coffee shop and a yoga studio where I would occasionally teach, which was amazing to roll out of bed and roll downstairs and teach and then roll back upstairs. That was delightful. And I was living with this very passive-aggressive, very neurotic housemate. And she called herself Bob.
Oh.
So I was living with Bob, and
did she refer to herself in the third person?
No, it wasn't in that way, but there were many ways in which things were restrictive and strange. And she had made, or her ex had made for her 3 bedrooms out of this loft. And so I was in this sort of tiny little yellow box of a room next to 2 fundamentalist Christians who were living together in sin? ?
I'm like, well, what were they doing together, though?
They were just living together, and she was waiting for him to ask her to marry him. And their parents didn't know that they lived together.
They were doing nothing else, though, right?
I have no idea. They didn't talk to me about it. And she wasn't very nice, and we did not get along. And so I just mainly, there was a lot of ignoring in that household. It was not a pleasant living situation. But I was living there in this sweet little yellow room, and I had met this man on set, Michael. And Michael was a locations guy, and he was tall and broad. Actually, he had a chest kind of like Anthony. He was like broad and warm and gushy and delicious and really sensual, pink lips. I'm just really into sensual, thick-lipped men. It's not thick, but well-formed lips.
Oh, yeah.
And I met him on set and just mercilessly flirted with him. And we had seen each other maybe once or twice before then. And I really had to convince him to come over. And the way that I convinced him to come over was I knew that he loved a hairless pussy. And I said, I just got a Brazilian. Want to come over tonight?
Nothing else needed.
And he did. That was the only time that worked. But
Wait, so you've done that more than once?
I think I tried to tempt him the next time I got a Brazilian, but it didn't work.
Oh.
He worked in crazy hours. That's true, but he was also really boundaried with me. So he came over and we didn't speak. He came into my room and we didn't speak. And we took 45 minutes to undress each other.
Wow.
It was slower than slow and then slower than that. And I have never been so aroused and then so ready to be penetrated because it was so slow. And I keep trying to get back to that experience. I keep trying to ask people to go slower, and nobody goes slow enough for me.
So I've been practicing celibacy, and now I will say abstaining from intercourse because I haven't been fully celibate the last week or so. But it's been...
And how would you define celibacy?
Oh, yeah. No sexual activity. So no self-pleasure, no sexual activity or interaction with others, no sexual conversation. I won't even go off to sexual fantasy in my mind.
How do you avoid that?
Well, listen, it has come on the back of a lot of breakthroughs that I've had over the past couple of months. I had entered into a really powerful plant medicine ceremony about 2 months ago, and it had been a while since I had worked with any plants and with medicine people.
When you say plant medicine, you mean?
So in this particular instance, I wasn't working with ayahuasca. I was working with kanna, which is a heart opener. There are derivatives, I believe, of MDMA that come from kanna, or vice versa. Cannabis, and then a family member to iboga. So different plants from the Amazon that all have different effects and different spirits. Also wachuma, which is known as San Pedro.
And when you call it plant medicine, that means you're approaching it medicinally.
Yes. And my take on that is I'm not using it in terms of the mindset that there's anything to heal within me, as much as I am coming into conscious relationship with these plants. We are relating to one another as if they were a person. And we're dialoguing back and forth.
But you're dialoguing back and forth with a substance that alters you in such a way that you expect it to be a kind of guide for you, to show you to yourself.
Yes.
I imagine that many people would say, well, what's the difference between taking drugs and receiving plant medicine?
In action, perhaps there's no difference. Maybe there's not, and I'm open to receiving that interpretation. For me, in my own life, the difference is my intention. If I were to use another substance and I had intention with it, I might be okay partaking. There have been times when I have been very intentional in my use of alcohol, and times where I have not been intentional. When I intentionally drink, oftentimes it's alone, and I will go to a bar or a lounge by myself. I'll bring my journal. I'll actually set an intention before I sit down at the bar. Usually when I'm journaling, it's to allow whatever is in me to flow out onto the page so that I can feel creatively expressed.
And then when you use plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
of any kind, you're approaching it with some other intention.
You know, my intention for each journey is a little different. I would say the underpinning of that is to become closer with myself, to learn something that maybe I didn't have an awareness of or a presence to before. And I can do this all without substance. Absolutely, as can we all. The use of substance and working with trained facilitators and shamans is simply an avenue to exploring ourselves in another way. We can do that through music. We can do that through poetry. You know, it's just simply an avenue that I like to explore and that I have enjoyed and have found deep empowerment in.
Do you think that it is really only partly about the substance itself or the activity itself and mostly about the framework that you create around it?
Yeah, there's a lot of power in that. I trust that I could manufacture a very similar experience with framework and intention and space, like allowing myself the space and time, and I could have breakthroughs as deep and profound.
So what was your intention for this medicine journey that you just mentioned, this recent one?
I went into this one feeling like something really big was on the horizon. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I would discover. I asked to be open to receiving whatever it was that I was going to learn about myself. And it was quite surprising because what I learned, among other things, was how I have been confusing sexuality and intimacy my entire life. And how I have inextricably linked the two. And so there was no space for them to be their own thing if they wanted to be. And as a result, have created so many situations for myself that could have been very deeply intimate and became sexual, and I didn't want them to go into the realm of sexuality. And I have also, in the past, used sexuality as a way to avoid deepening intimacy because it was easy to have sex or to objectify myself in a way in order to perform so that someone wouldn't really see what was happening behind the curtain.
Instead of to talk.
Instead of to talk or to not talk and simply let someone look me in the eye. And see my face and see any emotions that could be coming up for me.
What was your household like as a child?
My parents are still married.
Wow.
I know, it's a rare occurrence these days. When I was born, both of my parents traveled for work. My dad was a truck driver, all 48 states, and my mom was an international flight attendant.
Whoa.
Yes.
Their lives both revolved around travel.
Yes. And for a few years in my childhood, I lived with extended family because they were both traveling. So I was raised by the village, essentially.
Who did you live with?
I lived with my mom's brother and his wife on the weekdays and my dad's sister on the weekends. So I would travel back and forth between Jersey and New York. And they would basically do a handoff every week. And they would meet halfway between New Jersey and New York on the turnpike at a rest stop. And they would hand me off. And that was my life for a few years growing up.
How did it feel?
At the time, it seemed normal because I didn't know anything else. It just seemed like that was the thing we were doing.
Did you like them? Was it fun? What was it like in each of their households?
Yeah, I am really close with my family as a result. So I'm thankful in retrospect that I had the opportunity to spend some of my formative years with extended family. It was really nice because I got the perspectives and lessons from different people in my life that I really admire. And I also really missed my parents. And even once I had moved down to Florida, I was often with babysitters or friends for, say, the first few years, just because there was so much travel happening. And I rarely saw my parents together, even though they were still married. And even through elementary school to high school, there would be times where my dad would be on the road for 2 or 3 months at a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that the fact that they didn't see very much of each other is part of the reason why they're still married?
Yes. Absolutely.
Because I've been thinking so much about that. There's a blog called Advanced Style, and they have an Instagram, and it began with, I think it was women above 60. And then he fell in love and got married to his partner, who's a man, and he started being curious about what the next iteration was going to be. And he was curious about how some of these couples had this longevity, and it's being so rare. He started to document, photograph, and interview some of these stylish couples. And I just went to the book release for Advanced Love. And one of the stories, I didn't crack it open until that day because I kind of wanted it to be fresh. And I read some on the subway on the way there. Leandra went as my date, and we were looking at it on the subway. And one of the stories was a woman who lives in New York, and they asked, what's the secret, to your longevity? And she says, "Oh, I live in New York and he lives in LA and we meet in the middle."
Perfect.
And then I saw Barbara on the way out, and I told her that was very inspiring to me. And I loved to see an example of an unconventional relationship with such longevity succeeding. And he's very interesting. She's really vibrant. He's a little curmudgeonly. He was like, "I'm getting the lift," and he didn't look at us, didn't talk to us. But it seems to work, They found something that works for them. And that's really what I'm wanting to promote, is people finding a situation, a set of parameters, an architecture that actually works for their relationship, not one that's prescribed by the church, by society, by the magazines, So that's interesting that they didn't see that much of each other. How did they initially fall in love and get together?
The story goes that they met at a barbecue of a mutual friend. For some reason, I'm in disbelief about that, but they're sticking to it.
You don't believe it?
I believe it. It seems like such an ordinary meet cute.
So it seems too pat for you?
I don't know. I have this fantasy that they met in some other way. But I think they actually did meet at a barbecue of a mutual friend.
Okay.
Yeah, the end.
Right. So, since you were raised amongst all these people, I wonder how their attitudes about sex influenced yours. What did you learn about sex from them?
Not a whole lot, honestly. In my early years, I would say from, until 5 years old. However, at, the turn of my 5th birthday, and I don't know if it was exactly then, but from a very young age, I became very aware of sensations in my body. And I was very curious with how my body functioned. And I'm really interested in cause and effect. So I'm the kind of person that if I see a button and I don't know what it's for, I will literally press it. It might be an eject seat, but I'm still here, so it hasn't been yet. I have done some damage by by literally pressing buttons, though.
Literally pressing buttons?
Yes, I shut off an entire IT system once as a child.
I love this insatiably curious little you.
Yes. So at that point, once I was living in Florida, I became curious. I started looking around the house and finding little treats and treasures.
What did you find?
VHSs, of course.
Oh,
Do you remember
videos?
those?
Of course I do.
Yeah. So I found VHSs, I found books.
Do you remember what kind of porn they were?
Oh, yes. I remember finding a live Howard Stern recording, and there wasn't much porn until the end, and it was softcore,
Right.
but it was between two women. And that was the first I had ever seen of like anything more than a kiss on TV. And I'm like, what is this?
So your first imagery is two women.
Yes.
That's fascinating. I'm not sure I've ever spoken with anybody who has had that as a first experience of witnessing sex. What else did you find?
I found a book. It was covered in a paper bag as a book cover, just so the title wasn't showing. And to my recollection, it was a book about female pleasure. And
Really?
yes. And how to learn about female anatomy and pleasure.
Who was this progressive person who had this book around the house?
My amazing father.
Your dad?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what I will say about him? He's actually quite a conservative fellow. Very
Really?
conservative.
You mean politically?
Politically, sexually, in terms of outward expression. I don't know what he's like behind closed doors, although I have walked in on them a couple of times. However, that's a different story. However, he has always had a vested interest in learning, in developing, and investing in the interests of those around him. And so I have witnessed him over the years invest in my mom's pleasure.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never actually said that out loud, but it's such a beautiful thing.
I feel emotional about it.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially when somebody's conservative nature might have them feeling uncomfortable or nervous around something like that. But his desire to essentially love the people around him. And that seems to me like an act of service.
He's such an act of service kind of guy. He was on the PTA. He would come into my class and volunteer. And that was his way to spend time with me, even at school, because he was on the road so much. Yeah. He would come into my classes and bring a solo propane tank that he made, and he would cook Chinese food for my entire class every single school year. My mom taught him how to make Chinese food. She's Chinese. He's an American. And he would come in and he would make enough food for the entire class. And it would be a thing.
Do you think that your mom's culture, was she an immigrant?
She was a first generation. So her siblings were born in China.
Okay. But she wasn't.
Correct.
They had already emigrated. Do you think that Chinese culture in any way influenced the viewpoints about sex or the...
My mom is a very interesting creature because she does take on a fair amount of the Chinese culture. She's also from Brooklyn. So she's this tiny 5'1" Chinese woman with a very loud Brooklyn accent. And she's vulgar.
Amazing.
Yes. I've got many stories about her.
I hope you'll tell us one.
Yeah.
At least.
And I have only heard a fraction of her stories, but she was an international flight attendant and she loved to party.
Wow.
Yes. And as hard as she was on me in my upbringing around education and social and political correctness, I don't think I could ever fill her shoes with partying and misdemeanor acts.
Wow.
She never showed me that side. I didn't learn of these things until I was an adult.
So she was more of a disciplinarian.
Absolutely. She's the epitome of a tiger mom.
I'm really curious about this term. It refers to only Chinese mothers, right?
I think it covers a lot of Asian cultures now, just because there is a stereotype about Asian mothers in particular around their maybe stubbornness or steadfastness in education and pursuit of success.
I remember in several books that I read where Chinese mothers featured prominently as main characters, that they were very stingy with praise. And there was a superstition that if they gave praise, then they might be punished by the gods.
Wow.
Like if they bragged or if they...
That makes a lot of sense now. I don't know if she would actively identify with that. I don't know if that was ever explained to her in terms of gods being involved. However, I see those behaviors. I have seen and experienced those behaviors.
Like if you said, "Oh, my child is so wonderful," maybe then they would be snatched away. And something, they'd be taken from you or something bad would happen. You couldn't show that you were too attached to them or something. Oh, finally the heat went off.
We're hot enough.
That's right.
It's interesting because I hear from many other people about how proud she is of me. So I hear it through the grapevine. And it's only in my recent years that we've even exchanged words of affirmation.
That must have been hard.
It was. Yeah, it was challenging. It was the constant dilemma of I'm not enough. And to the point, I mean, I have it tattooed on my finger as well.
Wow.
I am enough. And there was this constant striving for perfection. And I have experienced quite literally how that has impacted my ability to become intimate with people.
Tell me.
I have some very specific examples from the last partner I was with about 2 years ago. And it's never quite happened this way before or since him. But I would go to bed with makeup on. And I would wake up before him. And mind you, I never slept well next to him. We also didn't build the kind of emotional safety that I now know is required for me to really show myself and feel safe in it. So I never slept well, but I would wake up, I would shower, I'd put on a little more foundation, I'd put on some deodorant, brush my teeth, and I'd hop back into bed. And
did you know that that's basically the first scene of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel?
And when I saw it, I felt so sad. I was like, oh my gosh, this poor woman, I can't believe she thinks she needs to do that. And then I was like, oh shit.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah. And I cried. And that happens in Napoli Ever After as well. A great movie on Netflix.
I've definitely done it. I've definitely gone to sleep with makeup on.
And it was this incessant...
When I was next to a lover.
Yeah, this incessant need to be perfect and presentable all the time. And yeah, that striving for perfection and objectifying myself.
That's the second time you've said that. What does that mean to you?
I've had so many run-ins with this breakthrough. And the simplest way I can put it is, I could see a chair in front of me and say that that is a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And the chair is static in its beingness because unless I manipulate it, it doesn't change. And I like that the chair doesn't change because I want the chair to function how I want it to function. And that's that I can sit on it and depend that it will hold my weight.
Mm-hmm.
And I very much one-dimensionalized myself in wanting to show up the same way every time. And that even meant really rigorous workouts so that my body would never change. Even through my menstrual cycle, my body very rarely shifted in weight or shape because I was so extreme in my workouts, in my eating.
Wow.
And it was just a constant striving to stay the same as if I were an object.
It's like you were trying to Starbucksify yourself.
Yes.
So that when people came in to you, they got the same experience.
And they would know what to expect.
But what to expect was excellence, right?
And nothing less than it.
And nothing less.
And I, even as I say that, I think deep down, it more than them knowing what to expect, I needed to know what to expect from myself. Because if I didn't know what was coming next, I would feel completely out of control. It's like I needed to know that I could maintain stasis in my emotional state.
This is not something that I would have ever guessed about you. I've struggled with enoughness and versions of it, self-worth, most of my life. And when I first met you and you came over and Tiger introduced you as, a potential housemate, I was just struck by how incredibly beautiful you are. And I was like, oh no, I'm not sure I can live with someone so beautiful. Like I don't want to be jealous of them all the time. And Tiger said, I don't think you're going to have that issue because she's really a woman's woman. And I wondered if you had done any alteration in order to be non-threatening to women.
It's something that I'm hyper aware of. And I'd have to dig to know where it came from. But anytime I meet new groups of people, if there are men and women, I will always address the women first. And I will always make more eye contact with the women. I'm very aware of social dynamics, and I can very easily tell when someone feels threatened through body language, through gazes, through interaction or lack thereof. And the last thing that I want to do is to have another woman feeling threatened in my presence.
Did you know that I thought that initially?
I had no idea.
Do you think that there's a way in which you actually tried to be excellent, but only at a certain level so you wouldn't shine so bright, so you wouldn't outshine your mother?
Interesting. I don't know if I've ever thought of my relationship to her in that way. Where that did come up for me was in comparison to friends. I would hear constantly, I'd be with friends and my mom would be there, their parents would be there, and I would hear friends' parents compare them to me. And I was like, stop right now. Like, I don't even want to go there. I don't want to be the reason why someone feels less than about themselves.
What did you do in those moments as a child?
Well, I felt really awkward. And yeah, I've done a lot of hiding. I've done a lot of hiding in my life and dimming my light. And it's really, I kid you not, it's only in the last few weeks that I've even started to tell people all of the amazing things that I have going on. And I'm like getting teary as I say it because I would really just hide it. Because I didn't I didn't want to seem like I was bragging. My coping mechanism over time has been minimizing. I'm really not the drama queen archetype. I am more the let it roll off your shoulder. Everything's good. Nothing's wrong. I've got it. I'm handling it.
It sounds like also a codependent archetype of control.
Mm-hmm.
And also trying to control, in this way, you're trying to control others' experience, right? So you're trying to control their experience so that they don't feel jealousy or less than by tamping yourself down. And of course, it's the inverse of the Marianne Williamson quote, right? There's nothing enlightened about dimming your light so that other people don't feel insecure around you. You were born to make manifest the glory that is within you. I'm paraphrasing something like that. And it's not just in you, it's in everyone. And as you allow your own light to shine, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. But it is astonishing how hard it is for so many, mostly women, I think, to step into that. Just even being willing to brag, right? And Morel and I do a practice of that regularly, right? And she also will note it, right? Whenever I say something that I'm proud of. Like, I hosted my first panel discussion the other night.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. It was about intentional communities and resource sharing. And I had an idea that I would be good at something like that. But now I know I'm fucking amazing at it. I am really fucking good at it.
Yes.
I can, because it uses my performance skills that I've honed for so many years, my essentially journalistic sensibility that I'm honing as I do this podcast, my interview style, my play, my banter, my experience with the space between myself and an audience, my curiosity, my insatiable curiosity, and it just allows me to flourish with all of those things together. And I was really excited about it, to find out the confirmation of that and really to feel I knew it was great. People told me afterwards, but I didn't need to be told because I knew.
Yes.
And that was beautiful and that felt amazing. And so I was telling my housemates, including Morel and Leandra, about that last night, and she said, well bragged.
Well
right?
bragged.
So she just gives a little like snappy snap, and she gets a little saucy and a little sexy, and she's like, well bragged, right? Because she wants to Mama Gina style, encourage my everything. She wants to encourage my flowering and my everything and my unfurling my fullness.
Yeah. One of the first experiences I had with you was at a community potluck.
Yes.
And you hosted or facilitated the opening conversation and the introductions and the blessing of the meal and acknowledgement of others. And I was so blown away by how you facilitated that experience that I will remember it forever. And I was like, who is this woman? I was like, I need to know her and I want her in my life. And it was that experience that for me opened up the start of our relationship. And then I came to your live filming of...
I was so happy that you said you wanted to come, and then you came.
Yeah.
To horizontal storytelling.
I was so excited to be there.
And I met you, and probably within 5 minutes, it doesn't even usually take me that long, but I thought, I want her to live here. Yes to her. I'm a yes to her. And I don't even like to use that terminology. I'm a yes, but yes to this person. And I felt you do the magic of a nonverbal communication, that you would be in my corner, that you weren't going to go to bat with me. You would or go to battle with me ever, you would always go to bat for me. Something like that. And that's a really beautiful quality. And I wouldn't want you to ever lose that. But also I have this sadness hearing you talk about dimming yourself and being like, I'm cool, I'm okay, everything's fine by me, I don't need much, or whatever I'm imagining, I'm paraphrasing. But I just have this desire to see you like wearing heels and lipstick on the street and like fully, and it's not about the plumage or the costumery, but I just have this desire to feel your glory manifested physically.
Thank you.
And maybe that's not the way that you want to do it, right? That's the Lila version, you know, like that's what I see in my mind.
Will you dress me?
I would love to. That would be really fun for me. Yes.
That'd be fun for me too.
Yes, thanks. I love to style my friends. It's such a delight to my directorial and sartorial senses that I get to, you know, I had the chance to do that at the Intimacy Warriors photo shoot that I wish you could have been a part of.
Wow.
Where I, you know, every bit of clothing that was on each person I put together. And then also Tiana would bring something to me and she'd be like, this over here. And then I got to be like, there, done, da, da, da. And that really excited me because I felt the director that's latent in me. And I don't know, maybe I studied to be an actor. I guess I wanted attention for sure. I always wanted attention, but maybe I was afraid to say, you know, no, I want to call all the shots.
Ooh, wait, say that again?
I want to call all the shots.
I like it.
I really do. I want to be, I want to make this TV series, this global intimacy TV series, and I want to be the showrunner. I want to.
Yes.
I mean, I will need someone who has that skill set, but I want to be saying, you know, this place, this location, put the camera here, you know, like that's.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, I'm so thrilled to see all that come to be. I know it's already happening.
I love how you talk about things like they're already happening. That's really.
Yeah, they are. It is. You've had conversations. The idea is there. You're taking action.
Yes.
And it reminds me of this scene from Game of Thrones. I never thought I'd be a Game of Thrones referencer, but I'm doing it.
I love it. I've seen every single episode. We watch it weekly at the house when it's on.
So you'll know that I can't remember her name, but Lord Baelish asks, do you want to be a queen? And she's like, no, I want to be the queen. And it just reminds me of what you're saying. And I had this fantasy the other day of like, being with a man, and even in non-monogamous relating, like being on top and riding him and having pillow talk about like sitting on my throne and taking my rightful place on my throne.
Yes.
And saying, tell me I'm the fucking queen.
Yes. Yes. I can't wait for you to do that. That sounds so
I'll let you
good.
know when it happens.
Oh, it's so I'm like biting my knuckle. That's so good.
Yeah.
Yes. That's great. Because daddy, you can say daddy and that's sexy and fun, but mommy is not sexy and fun, right? But queen?
Yeah.
You're the queen? Mm-hmm. Yes. I like that so much better than goddess because that's never really, it just feels too woo-woo, and I associate it with people who, although I did just call Annie Lala a goddess of love because I really consider her that way, almost otherworldly. Mm-hmm. But usually when it's thrown around, I just don't enjoy it. It reminds me of people who are not walking their talk.
There's an ethereal quality to it that's maybe, in my perspective, that's not earthly. It's
well,
not, like,
sure.
grounded.
And a queen is reigning upon the earth.
Yes. And there's just something from the science of the sound, queen, that has a certain...
Queen.
A certain je ne sais quoi. It has a conviction to it. It has an authority.
I can't wait for you to find this partner that you can ride who will happily say you are the queen.
That might be my vetting system. If he's not going to say it, then
there you go. Then it's not
bye.
Not for you. Not for you. Maybe for somebody else. Not for you. I don't want you to hide.
Thanks.
It makes me sad to think about.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have all of these impressions about people based on what we see on their social media.
Of course.
Or the little that we know about them. And there's this whole deep world to their lives. And people might not suspect that I have many insecurities or that I struggle with some of the things that I struggle with. And yeah, it happens.
What you seem to project to me energetically in space is you show up in a room and you just seem so at ease, so comfortable, and that can, have other people feeling comfortable. But it's always fascinating. It's always fascinating to check in. That's why I like circling so much, right? Because you're checking in with the story that you have about somebody. And there are many times that it's completely not that. And you have no idea. And they're actually there and they're not judging. They're fucking suffering or, or whatever. Whatever it might be. It's hard to remember when you are in a state of your sympathetic nervous system being activated, right? Where you're in fight, flight, or freeze, tender, befriend, those modes, to remember that you don't know what's happening on the inside of another person. And I have so much anger just below the surface. I realize this, that I mostly manage it, but I realize that when I walk around New York and somebody, whatever, pushes past me and doesn't say, excuse me, and how irate I get on the inside, like motherfucker. And maybe they really have some place to be. Maybe they're rushing to see their daughter in the hospital. Maybe that, I have no idea what's going on in their internal life. And also, it's not such a big deal for somebody to push a little my bag or something, so why should I be so fucking annoyed? I think it really just speaks to how little I've expressed my anger in my life.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that isn't ladylike. I put it in air quotes. Because was it acceptable for you to be angry growing up?
Was it acceptable? My parents thought I had an anger problem. My dad was a child psychologist and my mother had been a social worker in Brazil. And they sent me to therapy, play therapy, and I had she was probably a grad student, right? Or she was doing her PhD or something. I had a young therapist, and I was uncooperative and rude, but I must have actually really liked her. Because when she graduated, I vaguely remember her saying, how do you feel, that I'm graduating? And I'm like, I don't care. But I was so upset that then they placed me with somebody who was 20 years older because they wanted me to have someone who wasn't going to go away, and I wouldn't talk to her.
Wow.
But I talked to the other one apparently. And I think during the time that I was seeing the younger therapist, she must have diagnosed me with an anger issue. My parents bought me a punching bag, a red punching bag, and black gloves. and hung it in the... I remember it being in the doorway, but that doesn't make much sense because then you couldn't get past it. But they hung it in my room, and I did not touch it because fuck that. I'm not going to use that. That's stupid. That's so much resistance. And I don't know if I was embarrassed about it or angry that they thought I needed it or didn't think I had a problem. But what they said was that I bottled up my anger. So I don't know that they would have reacted badly to me expressing my anger, but clearly there was a part of me that said that it wasn't okay. And still, I have a lot of fear around anger, that if I were to show someone the full force of my anger, that they would just leave.
That really hits home with me because I've been exploring rejection and vulnerability and emotional expression a lot lately. And I literally just realized like 2 weeks ago that my heart has been really guarded. And I consider myself to be a very open-hearted, personable being. Yet that happens to an extent and within my control.
Yeah.
And I've come to learn that I've had a lot of shame around my anger, my sadness, my grief. And it just didn't seem like ideal emotions to express. And if I were to express them, would I be rejected by someone?
Yeah.
Would they see it and want to leave? And in that last partnership that I had referred to before, I had done everything that I could think of to be perfect for this person. From the way my body looked, to the way my makeup looked, to how I performed sexually. And he left. He left, he moved, we ended our relationship. And
He left you, or he left the States so he left you, or...
they feel like the same thing. They happened at the same time. So when all of that happened, I expressed happiness for him for following his intuition and growing his work elsewhere and following his dreams. And what I didn't express was my anger, my sadness, my grief, like my utter confusion, because we had it all. And we were even practicing an open relationship. So it's not that there was any sexual restriction.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, what the fuck, man? What is in California that's not here? I'm not in California. So what are you doing? I gave you everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And as I didn't express these things, I threw myself into my work. I was working like 60 hours a week. I was in grad school. I was starting a business. And I woke up one day and half my face was paralyzed.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. The left side of my face. And it was like that for a month. And it was one of the most challenging, heart-wrenching, emotional experiences I've ever had.
What did you do?
Well, I thought I could sleep it off. I did the minimizing first because that was my first line of defense. And I didn't tell anybody. And when I couldn't sleep it off, I called my aunt. I decided not to tell my parents.
Why?
I didn't feel like I could handle whatever questions they were going to ask. And I also didn't want to worry them.
Right.
Just like the reverse protection.
Right.
So
Trying to take care of their emotional experience by not telling them.
Yeah.
And your aunt, you perceive to be more hardy?
Maybe more leveled. Yeah, and she and I have a very close relationship. She was the one that I would live with on weekends growing up. She said, you need to go to a doctor right now. This was a Sunday. So I went to a city MD in the Lower East Side. I saw the doctor. 5 minutes in, gave me a diagnosis, pushed some pills my way, as it usually happens. And I remember standing in the middle of the Walgreens, about to fill the prescription, thinking there's got to be another way. He didn't even ask what's happening in my life. He has no idea.
What did he diagnose?
Bell's palsy.
Okay.
So I decided to not fill the prescription. I immediately sought the medical advice of 2 Chinese medicine doctors. And for the following months, I received really intense acupuncture to the face, very extreme massage to the face and the scalp and the neck area, a course of Chinese herbs. I stepped back from my work, from working out, and on top of this, I had full body hives.
My God.
Deeply cystic breakouts all over my face. I was extremely stressed out. I was ill, very, very ill, and in the middle of an apartment move. And this was in the winter of, I think, 2017.
Worst.
Yeah. And this was my breaking point.
So you pushed yourself so hard that your face froze up to get your attention.
Yes.
Holy moly.
And it's so interesting because you know how those videos come up on Facebook of like, here's what you were doing 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I look back, those videos pop up for me, and in the days leading up to this happening, I can already see signs of it on these videos. And in the moment, I had no idea this was about to happen. But I could see the breakouts in these videos. I could see the left side of my face start to get a little lazy.
Whoa.
The expression on my face was asymmetrical. And to look back at it now I get chills.
So it gradually improved with these Chinese medicine treatments?
Yeah. And I did my due diligence. I saw a neurologist. I saw a neurologist about 3 times throughout the course of that. And he had recommended going on the prescription drugs. And I said, I appreciate your opinion, and I'm going to continue my alternative treatments.
Wow, that's powerful for you to say that.
Yeah. And at the end of my last visit with him, he said, I didn't tell you this before. I'm surprised at how well you recovered because you were one of the worst cases I've ever seen.
Whoa, chills.
Mm-hmm.
Quick cold chills all the way up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was Bell's palsy, or it was a manifestation of your psychically punishing your body and mind for so long?
I'm of the belief it was the latter, and what they call the physical manifestation of that in facial paralysis is Bell's palsy.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And in Western medicine, at least the practitioners that I dealt with, there was little regard for the origin of this condition. It was, here are the symptoms, let's give you some pills.
And what would the Western medicine have done?
I was prescribed a steroid, an anti-inflammatory, and then I can't remember what else. It was 3 pills. From what I hear, they have a pretty good success rate at helping the paralysis.
But if you had done that, maybe you wouldn't have done all the introspection required to simply not return to the same kind of punishing that you were engaging in beforehand.
Exactly. I full-heartedly believe I needed to go through that process the way I went through it. Until 2 or 3 weeks in, I didn't tell my parents.
What happened when you told them? Did you feel like their reaction was intense and hard to...
By that time, I had taken enough space to give language to, hey, I want to share something with you all. Here's the perspective I'm sharing it from. I had time to ground myself. And at that point, when I shared it, they were very supportive.
How did you phrase it in a way that you feel it was well palatable for them, I guess?
I remember framing the conversation with saying what I needed from them. Like, I'm about to share something with you guys, and what I need right now is your support. I understand that you may feel worried, but what I really need is your support, and what would have me feeling more stressed out is knowing that you're worrying about me. And I don't know if that allayed any of their worrying on the back end of things.
Right.
But they certainly weren't expressing it to me. They were very calm and composed, which is what I needed. I needed that grounding force. I needed to know that my parents simply have my back. And so they came in and they were like, tell us what you need. Tell us if you need money for your treatments. Tell us if you need us to come up there. And my mom ended up flying up, and she helped tremendously with my apartment relocation. Like, we had a whole IKEA day after one of my acupuncture treatments, and she did everything. Like, she took care of everything. And my aunt is an angel. I remember having an absolute nervous breakdown on the phone with her one day, and I've never really been this way in front of someone before. Not a family member anyway. And I said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I cannot handle this. I need you to take over. She took over the coordination of the moving company, coordinating with my roommate's family. Like, she took care of it all. And I'm so grateful that my family showed up in this way during that time.
And they're all in Florida now?
My parents are in Florida, and my aunt is up here in New York.
And where were you when you were going through puberty, when you were in high school?
I was in Florida.
Still with the schedule that was pieced together, here on the weekdays, here on the weekends? And
No, in Florida, by the time I had gotten to elementary school, my mom had left her flying job and got an everyday come home sort of job.
Do you think that's when she toned down her wild life?
You know what's interesting? Yes, and I think there's a part of my intuition that says there was a lot of resentment in her needing to do that.
I can imagine.
Yeah. She loved flying. She loves traveling. And I wonder if that created resentment in our relationship growing up. And a distance.
Right. What she had to give up to be home for you. But I wonder why she chose to do it at the point that she did.
She was getting a lot of shit from people. There were family members that had shared some opinions about her having no business continuing to travel while she had a child.
You're the only child?
Yeah. She had me when she was 40.
Oh, me too. 41.
Yeah.
Huh. So your parents are older as well.
Yeah, my dad's 9 years younger than my mom. So she was a bit of a cougar. She got the young man.
I like it. Have you ever broached that with her?
Resentment?
The idea that she may have, felt resentment towards you for having to change her lifestyle and stop doing what she loved.
I haven't. And it's something that I'd be open to. I just never thought to really ask her about it. And I wonder if part of, what I perceived to be her tiger mom ways came from, origins of resentment. And I remember nothing
I got chills again.
Yeah. I remember nothing ever being good enough. I couldn't sweep well enough. The memes about like, oh, hey, I got an A. Why didn't you get an A+?
Right.
Like, that happened. I would get grounded if I got B's on my report card.
Wow.
Yeah, I would. It was pretty severe growing up. There was one point for a number of years in there where I went to school 7 days a week. Yeah, I would go to Chinese school on Saturdays and catechism or like Catholic school on Sundays. She's not even religious.
Wow.
She doesn't give a shit about religion.
But you had to perform the optics of showing up at Sunday school. Was that it?
Like I needed to be somewhere. I needed to be staying out of trouble. I needed to be developing in some way.
Oh, I was thinking of it as a social proof. Like, yes, my daughter's one of you. She goes to your church.
I think
I don't
that
know
was
if that's part of it.
My dad had some religious ties growing up, which he doesn't have so much anymore. She just needed me to be somewhere. Yeah, it was either the choices growing up were either Chinese school or Hebrew school. I'm like, Hebrew school? Like, that's so irrelevant. She just needed me to be doing something.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, Chinese school seems way more relevant to my culture.
Of course.
But if I couldn't get into Chinese school, Hebrew school was a close second.
Wow. Okay. So you told me that as a kid, even as young as 5, you were very aware of sensations and I do this and feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So when does sexuality come into your life? If you don't learn about it from your family, you see a few videos and then you have sex ed in school?
I don't think I got sex ed until high school. So there's a big gap in there. Honestly, how I learned was by experimenting. My first recollection of experimentation was with friends. So childhood playmates. And I had one friend in particular that we consistently played. And as a lot of little kids do, they role play. So we'd play school and, firefighter and police officer, and the role plays became increasingly sexual. Mm-hmm. And so we would be making out, light touching, and this happened for a while. Mm-hmm. And I learned very early on that I needed to hide my sexuality just because...
How did you learn that?
I'd walked in on my parents a couple of times growing up, and it was met with a lot of disappointment and anger that I would see what was happening behind a closed door.
Did they yell?
There was a startle and then a shushing and a pushing away. Like they had just gotten caught for something. And so I was like, oh, shit, I caught them. Oh, no. And so I had internalized that, well, I don't want to get caught. So when I have these friends over, I need to close my door. Mm-hmm. And I need to be hyper aware of when I hear footsteps coming. I'm very spatially aware because of that time in my life.
Right. I was wondering if your experimentation began with a female because of your first visual being with a female. But also my initial experimentations were also they were simultaneous masturbation with beanbag chairs in the playroom with a friend of mine.
Oh yeah, I did a lot of role playing with big stuffed animals and humping, like bed corners.
It's interesting because generally that tends to influence the way that people masturbate forever after, but I am not a frottage type masturbator. Like I'm very, like that would be more generalized pressure rubbing against something, and that's not how I masturbate. I'm very specific. I use my right middle finger on my clit. Only recently did I think, oh well, I have other fingers. Like I could probably use two sometime. I could probably like also touch oh, I could probably also touch around the introitus. You know, like,
Yeah.
only recently in the past few years, I'm like, oh. And actually, it was because I was kind of shamed by a lover of mine who said, you know, oh, yeah, I want to see how you masturbate. And I showed him, and he was like, you masturbate like you've been masturbating like that since you were 11. And I was like, but that was true. That was true. but the way he said it, I felt that he was judging it. And that, you know, maybe I wasn't exploring enough. There were other, you know, I was limiting myself. My pleasure was limited because I had only been doing it this one reliable way. And then I did start experimenting. I still prefer
Tried and true.
circular, you know, the circular pressure, but
Yeah. So it's interesting because this last winter when I was home, well, it's still winter, but this last December, I had only now, after like 20 years, approached my parents about some of my activities as a child. Because with this one childhood playmate, there was one day when she went home and told her parents what we had been doing after months of experimentation.
oh,
And I don't know what prompted it. Maybe I took it too far. I mean, because I was really leading the show.
okay.
I was the one really wanting to do this. And they called my parents, and it was not good.
Oh my God, what happened?
They came in and asked me what happened. And I remember, without them really even putting much of a burden on me, I created so much shame. I remember saying to them very clearly, go get the scissors. I'd rather be dead. And I was like an 8-year-old child. And I went into hiding. And every time thereafter, you know, in middle school and high school, when I had gotten, you know, quote, found out for something, I went into deep isolation. And this last December, I asked my parents about it. This is shame that I've been holding for 20 plus years. And they have no recollection that this ever happened.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. I guess this was my lesson.
It seems like you were fearful of, like, really of bringing shame on your family. Like that it would somehow extend to them, like your actions being found out would taint them, or because your friends' parents had called, then they knew and you brought shame on your family or something.
Well, that was how it was framed to me growing up. I remember being 13 and babysitting and having a boy over, my boyfriend at the time, and the parents came home early and they caught me with this boy in their house. And we weren't doing anything. We were watching Finding Nemo on the couch. But our shuffling when they got home made it look as if we were coming out of a bedroom. And they told my parents, and my mom was mortified. And she said, do you know how this makes me look? And I went into hiding.
Sure.
Yeah. And, you know, when I was 16 and my parents found out that I had a MySpace and that I had some half-naked pictures posted on my MySpace, I was met with a lot of very strong emotion, and I felt a lot of shame, and I went into hiding again.
So this fear of being found out and having to be so careful and controlled and regimented just threads through your life.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there are intermittent pieces where I was very risky in my behavior. I remember in high school, before I could drive, when my parents would drive my boyfriend at the time home, this happened with a few guys, I'd be sitting in the back seat with my boyfriend, and one of my parents would be driving, and I would give my boyfriend a blowjob or a hand job in the back seat.
How'd you manage a blowjob?
It would be for a few seconds at a time. And then I'd come back up and be thrilled that I hadn't gotten caught.
I was going to ask, when was the rebellion? Because at some point, that's got to crack.
Yeah. The rebellion really started to happen in high school. And mind you, this was never an outward rebellion. This was me creating my own world of sexuality and expression. And this was how I felt expressed, was through my sexuality, and simultaneously how I felt very burdened and suppressed.
It does seem like it was an outward expression of rebellion, though. You're giving the blowjob in the back seat.
That one, yes. That one, yes. Yeah.
But it's like, fuck you. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have this world of sexuality that belongs to me.
Yeah. I became very sexually promiscuous from a young age.
How young?
13. I mean, the first time I had intercourse was 13.
Was it good?
It wasn't bad. I mean, it was with someone that I was in I guess at the time, a committed monogamous relationship. He was my first boyfriend. And at the time, I was saying I loved him. It wasn't painful. And I don't recall feeling any feelings of regret or remorse after. It was almost like a liberation.
I can imagine the difference between having that experience and not feeling regret or remorse, and all of those previous times when you basically hadn't been doing almost anything that was a problem, mm-hmm. and you were caught and shamed and you had so much regret and remorse. Mm-hmm. That then maybe you have intercourse and you kind of quote unquote get away with it and you're like, woohoo! Yeah. All right, let's just party.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you had a pretty promiscuous high school life. Did you get any social flack for that?
I kept it under wraps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really good at keeping things secret.
Yes. I have created a craft of secrecy and curation, I would put it.
Wow, secrecy and curation. By that you mean you're very specific about what you share with whom?
Mm-hmm. And it's, I guess given a number of different experiences growing up, I learned, or so I thought, I learned how to create personas for people. And generally they were consistent. My persona that I used to really curate was one of intelligence and put-togetherness and political correctness. And it left very little wiggle room for me to truly be myself. But yeah, I imagine it as me thinking that I am the puppeteer manipulating the dolls below me, not being able to look up and see that my strings are actually being pulled.
Mm-hmm. It's such an apt image.
Yeah.
Is that your roommate?
That's the neighbor's shower.
Oh, wow.
Their bathroom is right there.
In all this is apartment living in New York City, ladies and germs.
It's actually quite charming.
Except it makes it very hard to express anger for me. Because people can really hear you. So if I just want to scream or something, I'm too concerned about their experience of life,
Yeah, I've definitely found myself screaming in pillows. One thing I don't cover my mouth for anymore is when I orgasm. Because I'm like, you know what?
Good.
Let them hear it. Let them experience my pleasure, and may it be their pleasure too.
Yes, may they be inspired and titillated. I like overhearing people in different rooms having sex. I think that's really
too.
Fun.
It's amazing. It turns me on.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Was much of your sex as a teenager pleasurable, though?
A lot of it was very performance based, which is how I proceeded in the rest of my life. There was a lot of pleasurable sex.
When you say performance-based, you mean that you were focused on... Why do I have to tell you everything? You were really focused on getting them off?
Very focused on getting them off. Because porn was a form of sex education, I had certain concepts of what a woman needed to look like in the bedroom. So I became very aware of angles and the way my body looked in certain positions and exactly what sounds to make as I was giving a blowjob to make it sexy, or exactly what thing to say.
So you're directing yourself and modeling while having sex.
Yes. And it, I understand now that it very much took me out of the experience. I was not present for a lot of sex. It's like my body was there, but I wasn't.
At this point, did you also feel like you had to come for the performance to be complete?
Yes. And that it needed to be a real show.
So did you fake it?
There have been times where I have faked it. And that's a new commitment that I want to make to myself. That I do not need to perform for anyone, ever. And it's something, to be honest, even in the work that I've done with people around sexuality and intimacy, that I still reconcile in my personal life. Because there is this deep concern for the other, and I don't want them to feel insufficient if I don't come.
Right.
It disregards the journey that my body wants to go on, the time that my body wants to take with something.
Yeah.
And how she wants to open up and blossom or not. And it has just, it's been a disregarding of that for so many years.
That's one thing that I have never done. I've never faked an orgasm. I think early on I developed a little pithy joke. I would be like, I don't want to encourage bad behavior.
I love that.
And of course, what I really meant was, I don't want someone to think that they're giving me pleasure by what they're doing if they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I am very vocal, naturally very vocal, and you will know by the sounds that I make if something is bringing me pleasure or not. And I have learned, but only in the time really that I've been living at Hacienda Villa have I learned to use my words to say, that's too fast. Could you go higher? I wouldn't say even higher, please. I would just try and scooch my body so that that I put my body in the position that I wanted for them to be licking me instead of just saying higher, please, or slower. Or even with Anthony at one point, I said, I'm not ready for that yet. And that communication was key. And he's, I think, had enough experience that he didn't take it as something to do with his esteem or his skills or his prowess. He just took it as, oh, she's not ready for that yet.
Right. Yeah.
I'll do some more of something else. And then maybe in a little bit she'll be ready for that. And it's so amazing how simple it can be, but there's so few models for it that anybody has. I just remember how amazing it was when Kenneth taught me in the first few months that I was living there this little game, I guess, that he teaches, where I think it's essentially the find the clit and find what feels good game, right? And you can give three sets of directions. You can say slower, faster, higher, lower, and what is the other one? More pressure or less pressure, I think is what it is. He might phrase it differently. But essentially there were 3 criteria. And with those 3 criteria, you could direct someone to essentially your hotspot.
Wow. That's, it's really thrilling to hear that, because it's not like the concept you're talking about is very simple.
I know.
And accessible.
I know.
And I'm over here like, I honestly, in good faith, cannot say that I, through the roof, enjoy being eaten out. Because I have not had the language to create that experience for myself. And I haven't utilized the language. I have lived in so much fear around, oh my God, he's going to think this takes too long, or he's going to get impatient, or he's not going to want to do this. Yet I know that I'm willing to give plenty of time giving a salacious blowjob. Nobody ever seems to be concerned about my time. I mean, honestly, they're just sitting there and they're enjoying it.
Right.
So something's got to give.
I also do sometimes still have that of like, oh, it's taking too long, or sometimes I'll be like, it's not going to happen right now, and then when a man has been strong enough in his desire for me to have pleasure that he's like, shut up, or pushes my hand aside and continues. That's been amazing.
Oh my gosh.
That's been amazing. When I've been like, I'll give you this out. You don't have to do this anymore. And he's like, shut up. I am giving you this, and that has been really gorgeous and healing.
Yeah.
Healing for all the times that I was worried, and all the partners who maybe did feel that way, or didn't enjoy it that much. I've had recently a few lovers who really love doing it. And that's been also a breakthrough for me, is when I'm with someone. And I discovered, I think, first with a German lover that I had when I was traveling in 2000. Nope, that's not true. My very, very first person who licked my pussy, who gave me oral sex, he also loved it. And that was what allowed me to have such an amazing experience, an incredible orgasm, because I could relax. I knew that he loved it. I knew that he wanted to be doing it. I knew that it gave him pleasure. Whether or not it was hard was not important. Whether or not he was hard during it was not indicative of how much he was enjoying it, that he really did like it and like the sensation, like looking at me that way, and liked my taste and liked my smell. And if I could relax around that, because I had one encounter with a boy in high school who made a joke about fish and like theatrically fished a pubic hair out of his teeth. And so I felt after that, oh, maybe I don't smell very good, or maybe I have to get rid of the hair, or nobody's going to want to, want to go down on me. And to be with someone who just thoroughly enjoys it has been a balm, has been medicine for me to just give myself over. And if I sense that they are getting tired, that they're not really enjoying it, or that they're frustrated or something, I probably won't come.
Right.
I probably won't.
Right. And it's so medicinal to hear you talk about this, because it's something that I have continuously, in the past have struggled with. And my last boyfriend, that partner that I was with 2 years ago, did not enjoy it on a whole. Did not enjoy it, and was very concerned about his own pleasure.
Right.
And we had worked through that a lot throughout our relationship, but I was always afraid to take up space in that relationship. In bed, sleeping, emotionally, sexually. And so I became very closed off, even though that is not my natural way of being. And so I feel that I'm on this journey now, as I've chosen to take everything off the table, as I'm starting to reintroduce aspects of my own sexuality to myself and to choosing suitors. That feels really important for me. I've been thinking about what I want to create for myself in 2019. And I want to create the sexiest, most pleasurable, consensual lovemaking experiences this year, where I feel expressed and taken care of and nourished and supported and just absolutely adored.
Let me give credit where credit is due. Chad Michael Snavely is my editor. He's a podcast maven, and you can find his full roster on chadmichael.com. Alan Markley composed my intro music, and his exploits can be witnessed on Instagram as Plastic Cannons. Shauna Shea created my cover art, and you can hire her for graphic design and character illustration on 99 Designs. In next week's episode of Horizontal, the second part of my conversation with Lee, episode 71, we discuss intentional masturbation, receiving oral sex, fantasies of autocunnilingus, giving to yourself what you wish for a partner to give you, the indefinable mystery of Tantra, red Tantra, white Tantra, urban Tantra, a tantric temple called the Women of Venus, Mama Gina's practices of trinities, swamping, and spring cleaning. And Lee and I do something unprecedented on the podcast, something I've never heard recorded anywhere else either. We each do a spring clean on a topic we're struggling with right now, in real time, stream of consciousness style, and entirely unedited. I feel a little bit nervous to share it, actually, but that's when I know I have something really worthwhile to reveal. Next week's installment is available exclusively to my beloved patrons of the Horizontal Arts. Become one and get access to the full Horizontal catalog on patreon.com/horizontal with Lila. patreon.com/horizontal with Lila. On Saturday, March 16th, Lee is curating an event called Eating Out, an erotic feast. It's inspired by oral sex. She calls it an edible education. For all the details, visit her at leenoto.com and sign up for her mailing list. On Thursday, March 28th, I'm leading The Art of Trust, an intimacy games workshop. If you've seen any of the shots from my Intimacy Warriors photo shoots, you might have an inkling of what this workshop will be like. We'll play games like Sphinx, Hot Seat, Human Conveyor Belt, and the Touch Gauntlet. This is what I taught at Burning Man. Details coming soon. Sign up for my missives on horizontalwithlila.com. Until next week, may you have someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. Thank you for getting horizontal.
Yes. I deserve that.
Yes. Yes, you do.
Thanks.
Yes, you do.